Hi there, I'm Leisha Gerbinski. This is Saskatchewan. I have a picture of Megan Gallagher etched in my memory. She has her long dark hair pulled into a low ponytail. She's wearing a plain black t-shirt, and it looks like she's sitting outside, cross-legged, her arms resting on her knees. She's gazing down at a beautiful black dog, with a little grin on her face, love in her eyes for that animal. This picture is so vivid to me, and it probably is to you too. It appeared on a massive billboard at one of Saskatoon's busiest street corners. Think of how many of us drove by, eyes locked on Megan. I know I drove by it almost every day. Right next to her picture was some large black text, all capital letters, with the word missing. Beneath it, loving mother, daughter, and sister, last seen September 19th, 2020. I remember thinking, what happened to Megan? Now, we know. Hi, Candace.
Hi, Leisha.
This is my colleague, Candace Lipsky. She's been digging into the disappearance and murder of Saskatoon's Megan Gallagher with our other colleague, Dan Zakreski. Candace, do you remember that billboard?
Absolutely, Leisha. Saskatoon, we have a lot of big billboards here. I see a lot of them every single day. And I actually hadn't lived in the city that long when this one was put up. So I remember it really catching my attention. And of course, Leisha, you and I see news releases of missing people all the time. But billboards are a little bit different. They're a little bit more. And I remember wondering, who is this person? Where did she go? And of course, did something happen to her?
When I stop and think about it, that's all I really know about Megan is that picture on the billboard, that photo. But who she was or what she liked or even how she died are they're just unknown to me, especially because the trial felt so secret due to that publication ban.
Yeah, I feel the same way, even though, of course, we did a lot of coverage. And it's a story that's really gripped the city, the province, and in part because it's been unfolding over the course of several years now, 5 years. Stories about Megan's disappearance would come up every now and again over the years, and every time I was really just struck by the details of the case. I've covered pieces of it. I've been near my colleagues covering the searches, the arrests. And when I counted it up, Leisha, there were more than 50 CBC articles alone about Megan's disappearance and what followed.
And yet I know so little about her.
Yeah. It was when I started talking with her dad and stepmom, Brian and Deb Gallagher, that it became obvious to me that for all of those articles, for all the court coverage, we'd never really heard about Megan. Maybe bits and pieces. Like I do remember her parents talking about her love of animals, for example.
No wonder they chose a picture of Megan then with the dog for that billboard.
Yeah, and that picture you remember on the billboard was actually taken by her family on the last day that they saw her alive. I really became desperate to figure out who she was before late September of 2020, before that billboard. And her parents told me she was a beautiful person, so funny and so loved. But her life had, it felt, been reduced in some ways to the circumstances of her death, and that just felt wrong.
Yeah, there's so much wrong here, especially when you start to hear the details of how she was killed.
It's so shocking. A horrific crime was committed. And to be honest, it's been hard for me to learn some of the details of her murder.
Yeah, and also the shocking revelation at the number of people who ended up being charged.
9 people.
9. I mean, that's part of the reason why people want to know more about what happened, about her death. Because 9 people, it's like your jaw drops and you think, how? How did that happen? Why?
Yeah, exactly. We'll dig into the investigation and the trials because there's so much that happened behind the scenes that people don't really know about. But it's really about understanding the full picture here from beginning to end. I guess there isn't really an end, is there?
No, I can imagine there's no end in this for the Gallaghers.
No, there isn't. It's changed really everything about their lives, their hopes, their dreams, their plans. They told me that they think that there would be a lot more laughter in their lives if all of this hadn't happened. And what was it all for? For nothing. No one, of course, deserves something like this to happen to them.
Yeah, so we're going to learn more about Megan. She was an athlete, a parent, someone who was always trying to make people laugh. We're going to meet her family. We'll find out about why they never stopped searching for their daughter and the toll that it took on them. Here's part 1.
I moved to Saskatoon just a few months before Megan Gallagher went missing and paid attention to her story with every year that passed. My time as a journalist here runs almost parallel to the incredibly complex criminal case that followed her disappearance. She was 30 when she was murdered, the same age that I am now. We were both born in April, her just a few years before me. I first talked to her dad, Brian, years ago, and after speaking to him again recently, I'm touched by how much his voice sounds like my dad's. Megan Gallagher was last seen alive leaving her friend's house on September 19th, 2020, almost exactly 5 years ago. What happened in the days that followed would eventually lead police to 9 different people, each facing charges ranging from murder to assault to getting rid of her body. At least 9 people saw the Métis woman after that September evening. Her father, Brian, and stepmother, Debbie, were not among them. Brian and Deb Gallagher haven't seen Megan since September 18th, 2020. In the years since, the pair have become familiar faces in Saskatoon, at marches, court hearings, in media interviews, local celebrities, under the worst circumstances imaginable.
We're at a very special place for our family and Megan and everybody else that was involved with amateur softball in Saskatchewan. That's called Joe Gallagher Field, what used to be called Gordie Howe Field, for Gordie Howe Fastball Field. It's now been renamed a few years ago to Joe Gallagher Field. The whole complex itself is phenomenal. It's a world-class facility, and the sun is shining. We're sitting outside along the right field fence, and some people might think of it as the beer gardens, but right now it's the most comfortable spot we could find.
When Brian and Debbie walk up, Brian is wearing a black t-shirt that says MMIWG on the front. That stands for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, and it's an acronym that you'll hear more in the coming episodes. On the back, there's a picture of Megan with the word missing running down the left-hand side. And right away, I noticed Debbie wearing another symbol that I recognize, a red dress pin. It honors victims and raises awareness about the crisis of violence against Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. It's obvious to me that this is a familiar place to them. Brian says hello and tells us he's going for a short walk around the area, perhaps to say hi to some of the grounds folks that I've seen working this morning.
Yeah. And you do have to excuse us. We always think it's going to be easy, and it's not. Right?
I can only imagine.
So that's why he's kind of just
That's okay. Oh, yeah.
wandering around.
We have
and
lots of time.
Yeah. No, and like I said, I know we said, yeah, we'll do that. And then it's kind of like, I can't.
No, but it's now that it's time.
It is.
I get
It's,
I understand that. That's fine.
yeah.
We have lots of time. So.
Yeah.
As hard as it is, they know it's important. In the past years, they've made it their mission to ensure that Megan's story continues to be told and that she is remembered. Do you guys come here often?
We haven't come for a few years, except for like Megan's Walk always starts here. We did that for the 4 years. When Brian was younger, yes, the kids and I were here all the time. They chased balls for 25 cents, making their fortune. But since he doesn't play anymore, I think 11 years ago he finished playing. So yeah, we don't come very often anymore.
Tell me about Joe Gallagher.
Oh my goodness. This could take a long time, but I'll try and keep it as short as I can. Joe Gallagher is our father. I'm among a family of 3. I have an older brother, Dennis, and a younger sister, Wendy. And Joe Gallagher is an Indigenous person. He's a Métis person that was raised just west of town by Grandora, moved to the city when he was a young man, and one of the things he wanted to do was play ball, so he started playing ball as a young man. And I'm going to say that was 50 years of involvement in amateur softball in Saskatchewan. So he was also a teacher. He was one of the first 2 self-identified Indigenous teachers in the province. He is also one of the co-authors of the first Native Studies 10-20-30 curriculum that is still being, for the most part, used in Saskatchewan today. He was also a musician. We played together in a band for oh my goodness, a long time. A lot of wedding dances, old-time dances, a little bit of rock and roll, country western music. He's well known around the community for a number of different things. So.
I read that 750 people or so came to the field when it was renamed Joe Gallagher, hey?
Yes, that was quite the day. It wasn't as warm as it is today, but we gathered here. And among some of the people that he was with being recognized for that, Gene McWillie, Glenn Reeves, Bob Van Imp, the celebrities that were here that day, it was quite humbling to acknowledge that your dad was part of this.
Was Megan there that day?
Megan was not there that day. She was somewhere else with her birth mother. Lindsay and the rest of the family was there, and we do have a photo of it. And I looked at it just yesterday, and I thought, oh, yeah, right, Megan wasn't here that day, but she missed it. But she was definitely part of, like Deb was saying, chasing balls and doing a number of different things around. She was a big part of this complex.
It was a special spot for her too?
Oh, yes. Yeah. When she was, I don't know, like a teenager, she moved up to Cumberland House for a while, Isle Cross and then Cumberland House. So then she kind of shared time. So, she was actually a good ball player herself. So like I said, the family tradition, continued on through Megan. She was also going to be a pitcher, and she was throwing, 65 miles an hour at 12 years old?
60 miles an hour at 13 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was. She was quite phenomenal. She was also a pretty good hitter too. The last year she played Pee Wee ball, she had 18 home runs in a 12-game season. She'd often be seen out here with the men too. She would take warm-ups with us, and she would catch fly balls and line drives from the guys like it was nothing to it. She made a lot of our ball players look a little bit embarrassed. She started in ringette when she was, I think, 4 or 5. Like the hockey pants that she was wearing in ringette went down past her knees, so you couldn't hardly see her shin pads. And then she played up until I think about 14 years old again, and then she came back later as an adult and played some junior non-contact.
I had no idea that she was such a sportsy young girl. What else can you tell us about Megan when she was growing up? You're both laughing like you have like tons to say.
Sense of humor?
Yeah, well, her and Jesse, my son, were the same age. They were 7 days apart. So I think they always thought that they were great brothers, right? So they were about the same size. She always had to challenge him to, like I said, the power of women over boys or whatever. So like the eating competitions, the wrestling, the bouncing on they were kind of like two Tasmanian devils in the same room. And then, of course, Lindsay and Trina, the cousin, were kind of the older ones and tried to keep those two in line. But when those two got together, there was always scheming and something going on, whether it was building forts or planning something to terrorize their siblings and cousins, right? So they were...
Yeah, and her sense of humor was incredible. Like, we still giggle every time something goes wrong or somebody gets tripped up. Oh, that's Megan that did that. I was going through some of the photo albums just yesterday and looking at pictures, and the one that pops into my head was when they thought they wanted to be a hairdresser, because I've always had fairly long hair. So they dressed my hair up, and I don't know what this adornment was on the top of my head, but it was. She loved to be a part of things like that. She always kept you thinking, what's she up to? What's coming next? And it was never bad or malicious. It was always just good kind of humor. She liked to see people happy. She didn't like to see people upset or hurting. She was always one of the first ones there to give care and to give help. If somebody needed a hand with something, she would drop whatever she was doing. Later on in life, it was if somebody needed a ride, she was the first one there to offer a ride and go and pick people up, even though she didn't have any gas in her car. And if somebody was hungry, she was there to cook a meal. She had a goal or a dream of being a Red Seal chef, and she was on her way to do that when she was taken. So.
I wanted to know who Megan was. I wanted to hear what she sounded like. I told Brian and Debbie this early on. They said that while they have album upon album full of pictures of Megan, they regret not having more videos so that they can hear her voice. But as we sit on the benches at Joe Gallagher Field, Debbie pulls up this one on her phone.
It was nominated by Gianna Bro, hate you, by the way, for the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. I nominate Russell McCauley, Nick A., a.k.a. Nikki Marasti, and Bethany Fosnell. Oh, fuck. Is it okay if I cry?
It's impossible not to share a laugh as we watch it together. I immediately remember making my own Ice Bucket Challenge video many, many years ago. Deb and Brian tell me that Megan was like a magnet to animals and children. And I see it for myself too. In many of the photos they show me, she is surrounded by little ones. Megan was also a parent. Her partner gave birth to a daughter about 8 years ago. After the couple split up, Brian says Megan was trying to get more time with the girl. She talked to them about it on the last day that they saw her.
It was just, looking back now, it was a surreal day. We had a really good visit. She was very excited. She had talked to a lawyer about getting, more visitation and stuff with her daughter. We knew she had a visitation coming up on September 30th. It was just like a surreal day. We talked about many things. She was outside with Brian for a while playing with the puppy, and then she come in and we had some, more in-depth conversations. There was absolutely nothing about that day that told us she was at risk or into anything negative, or it was just the perfect day. And I guess that's how we get to remember her.
There was no way they could have known on that perfect day that it would be the last time they saw her.
There is a woman missing in our city. Megan Gallagher hasn't been seen since September. Now her parents have put up a billboard to raise awareness of their missing daughter. Her father, Brian, says the family desperately wants to find her. He says the whole thing has been extremely difficult. The family's asking anyone with information to alert police. More on this here on Saskatoon Morning after World Report.
It was a devastating moment for everyone in Megan's orbit. That includes Ingrid McCall, Megan's birth mom, who lives in eastern Saskatchewan. Brian reached out to the McCalls on my behalf. They say it's incredibly difficult for Ingrid to talk about what happened to her daughter. So for the past 5 years, Brian and Debbie have become the public voices for Megan. I asked them what was going on in her life when she went missing.
We don't talk to all of our kids every single day, so it was probably about a week or so. And then people say, well, has anybody heard from Megan? Usually she's, borrowing cars, borrowing food, borrowing something. And we started kind of checking around with other family and friends and not on Facebook and stuff. After, like I said, I think it was September 30th, she was supposed to see her daughter. And then that's when the missing person, we knew nothing would have kept her from seeing her daughter. So something had to be wrong. Right, she wouldn't miss it, right? So,
What was going on in her life when
COVID-19? Megan was a very social person. She liked to be around people, so that was the biggest thing that was going on in her life. And like I said, she was looking at raising funds for some legal challenges. One of the things that Megan used to do was come out to our place, and one of the ways that I connected with her was she would say, "Dad, can you fix my car?" And I would say, "Well, you betcha. Come on, bring it out." And that's so when she would come out and do that, that's when we would have the most in-depth conversations, and that's the last one that I remember. And like Deb had said, that day on September 18th when she was playing with her young pup there was just an incredible day. I believed everything that any challenge that she might have had was being worked out. She was finding her way through it. She was getting her feet on the ground firmly planted.
There's another dad who has been following this story over the past few years, CBC reporter Dan Zakreski. He has reported on crime and policing in Saskatoon for decades. When I had the idea of doing a podcast about Megan, he was the first person that I turned to. Okay, Dan, I'm wondering what you remember about the start of this story.
When I look back on it, for something that, we followed off and on for 5 years, it started with a completely unremarkable news release. Back in September of 2020, we got a news release from the city police asking for help finding a woman named Megan Gallagher, 30 years old, had been reported missing by her family. They had all the normal language that we have in these types of news releases. They were concerned that she was in a vulnerable state. They had a description of her tattoos, where she had last been seen, and that was it. It was completely typical of any missing person news release from the city police that we've gotten in the previous decade. And I think, the one thing that really made it common, if I would call it that, was her age. This wasn't a little kid, so it's always, she's 30 years old. Who knows what's going on?
What stands out to you when you kind of zoom out on the story of Megan Gallagher? Like what stands out to you when you look from the outside in?
How it escalated from, as I said, a fairly common missing person release to a few months later, the police putting up a follow-up release saying that this woman her disappearance was being investigated as a homicide. So something had happened in those 4 months. And then finally, 2 years after she disappeared, 9 people charged in connection with her homicide. Even though they didn't have a body, they still charged 9 people. So you had this escalation, the forensic evidence that they released, and then just the sheer number of people involved, 9 people. We knew right away that this was going to be complicated and potentially really ugly.
And 9 people, like what did that tell you at the time? What did that make you think when you heard that there were so many people involved?
Gangs and opportunism. It also, given sort of what happened in that and what I knew of crime in Saskatoon, it sounded like something had just gone sideways. We don't typically, this isn't Ocean's 11. You don't have 9 people sitting around a table deciding to murder someone. Something went really bad. There were a bunch of people involved, and we were going to have to sort through what happened. It looked like it was going to be complicated.
Why do you think that Megan's story is such an important one to tell, Dan?
Because they're all uniquely horrible in their own ways. With her, I think it was the number of people involved, the fact that people just didn't know who she was. She became, we had 2 photos of her and grieving parents. And it's just so typical of the murdered and missing Indigenous women's stories, her circumstances. I've not heard anything over the 5 years to suggest that Megan Gallagher did anything to deserve what happened to her. This wasn't somebody that was, killed in a gang robbery or in a caper. Somebody figured that she had done something wrong and they went to exact revenge. And I just think it's so important. Saskatoon doesn't have a lot of murders every year. We average anywhere between 9 and 15. Each one is their own story. And when you have someone who goes missing, I think that story has to be told to honor the person that's gone missing and their family and their memory. That's why it's important.
Dan brought up something I wanted to talk to the Gallaghers about. I've heard people wonder about whether Megan may have had gang affiliations that led in some way to her death.
Did Megan know people who were involved in gang? Of course. I know people who were, half the kids that, Jesse and Megan went to school with are involved in gang. As far as we know, she was not involved in any gang activity, like she wasn't, trying to get into a gang or anything like that. Did she have associates? I'm assuming yes. Some of the people she brought out to the farm, I, kind of wondered. But like I said, there was nothing that we thought, oh, Megan's really going down a dark path here, that we would ever intervene. Like I said, she liked everybody and she would help anybody out of any situation. So as far as her being affiliated with a gang, no, we don't believe, she was. Did she hang out or party with them? She had been clean and sober for almost 6 years.
Yeah. I would echo the same kinds of things, like knowing people in the gangs, like we know people in the gangs. That they're, as an Indigenous person and living in Saskatoon, it would be impossible for somebody not to know somebody that's affiliated with the gangs. And we've asked the police the same thing, and they said no, Megan was not gang affiliated. Just because you hang around or you know that somebody that is, it could be your relative, it could be, it could be one of your closest friends that gets groomed into the gangs. And the whole gang scenario is a real tough spot because they are, the young people especially, I really get frustrated and angry when they're groomed into that. It's as simple as somebody being hungry and, hey guys, hey bro, come on, I'll buy you lunch. Now you owe me a favor without telling him. And then, a week later, hey, I bought you lunch last week. You should come and do this with us. And once you're reeled in, that once that hook is set, it's easy to reel you in until it becomes to the point that there really is no way out. So as far as going back to Megan being gang affiliated, I would say no, not at all. But the realities of people being reeled in and groomed in is just it frustrates me without using bad words.
And that could have been happening and we just weren't aware of it. Like, she was, like I said, under a lot of stress or whatever. And with COVID, we know she was trying to raise money. But like I said, there was no red flags.
Yeah, no red flags. What strikes me is just how ordinary some of those last conversations Brian and Deb had with Megan.
Yeah, these totally normal parent-daughter interactions. A beautiful sunny day, and then it just becomes the last thing.
And that was 5 years ago now, and then her body's found 2 years later.
And it's only now that we are really starting to get the full picture of what actually happened.
This brings me back to the start, and I think the reason why we are all so absorbed in this story. 9 people charged in connection with her murder.
Yes, and meanwhile, there are dramatic behind-the-scenes developments that we're only starting to learn about now that help us kind of piece together the timeline of Megan's story.
And why all the silence?
That's a question that we get into in part 2, which is available in the feed right now. I think people will be surprised by how much of this story they didn't know, even if they've been following it from the beginning like we have, Leisha. And really, this is a story about Saskatchewan, about policing, about justice, and about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
You don't have to wait. You can dive into the rest of the series on the podcast feed right now. Candace, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm Leisha Gerbinski. Thank you for listening. If you like what you're hearing, you can leave a review. Better yet, you can share this special series with a friend. You can also connect with us anytime at thisissk@cbc.ca. Talk again soon.